My name is Daniel, and the night everything snapped did not start with shouting or drama. It happened during our regular monthly game night with a few couples we had known for years. But before I get to that moment, I need to explain how we even ended up there. For about 3 months, things in my home had been slowly turning into a kind of quiet misery. My wife, Melissa, had begun treating me less like her husband and more like some unwelcome visitor who kept showing up without an invitation. Every conversation felt like she was searching for something wrong with me. If I suggested we watch a movie together, she would roll her eyes and say something like, "Fantastic. Another one of your predictable action movies." If I offered to cook dinner, she would smirk and say, "Please do not. I would actually like something edible tonight." At first, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. She had taken on a new job, and I assumed the stress was getting to her. So I did the typical husband thing, picked up more of the housework, gave her space when she seemed irritated, even started working out a little more, thinking maybe she would appreciate that I was trying. But nothing improved. In fact, her attitude got sharper, like she was almost looking for reasons to be annoyed with me. Then came game night, the night everything shifted. Once a month, our little group of 4 couples rotated houses and hung out. This time, we were at Ben and Laura's place. Drinks were flowing. Everyone was laughing, the kind of atmosphere where nothing heavy is supposed to happen. Someone pulled out one of those relationship question games meant to spark deep conversations, usually harmless. Things like, what is your partner's biggest fear? Where would you go on a dream trip together? People were giving sweet answers, having fun with it. Then came the question that hit me like a punch to the chest. Would you marry your spouse again, knowing everything you know now? The other couples answered first, heartfelt stuff. Absolutely. In a heartbeat. I would propose again tomorrow. People were smiling, joking, sharing stories. Then it was our turn. And without even a pause, Melissa, with the biggest smile on her face, said loud enough for the entire room to hear, "Oh, absolutely not. Not a chance. I mean, honestly, why would I sign up for this twice?" Everyone froze for a split second, and then the laughter exploded. People assumed she was just being playfully brutal. Someone said, "Wow, Melissa, tell us how you really feel." Another joked, "Points for honesty." But I was not laughing. I watched her face, really watched it. She was not joking. She looked almost relieved to have said it out loud. Everyone's eyes turned to me, waiting for my cute comeback or some goofy joke to match hers. Instead, I took a slow sip of my drink, set it down, and said, "You know what? That is the first thing we have agreed on in months." That wiped the smiles off a few faces. The room suddenly felt heavier. People were unsure if this was still just a bit, or something real. Melissa's smile dropped. She had obviously expected me to laugh it off, or say something dopey to smooth the moment over. But I did not. Instead, I reached into my jacket and pulled out a manila envelope I had been carrying around for a week. I placed it right in the center of the coffee table, next to the playing cards and empty glasses. "What is that?" someone asked quietly. I looked around the room at all these people who had watched us get married, celebrate anniversaries, go through holidays, people who thought they knew our relationship. I said calmly, "Since we are being honest tonight, I figured this was as good a time as any." The room fell silent. You could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. Melissa stared at the envelope like it was dangerous. Her expression twisted from confusion to worry. "What is that?" she repeated, barely audible. I leaned back, looked her dead in the eyes, and said, "Divorce papers. Already filled out. Just need your signature." A collective gasp went through the room. Someone's drink hit the floor. Someone whispered, "Are you serious?" Melissa's face went completely pale. "You said you would never marry me again," I continued. "Well, lucky for you. After tonight, you will not have to." Then I told everyone at that table, and now you, how I reached that moment. Because this did not happen overnight. It started 3 months earlier with small things, one after another, chipping away at everything we used to be. After that game night moment, a lot of things suddenly made sense. But the truth is, the cracks had been forming long before that evening. It started with small comments, little jabs that sounded harmless if you did not look too closely. Whenever I suggested grabbing dinner at our usual spot, Melissa would roll her eyes and say something like, "Really? You cannot think of anywhere else. We always go there because you have zero imagination." If I tried to tell her about my day, she would keep her eyes glued to her phone and mumble, "Uh-huh, barely acknowledging that I was talking at all. Then it got worse. One Friday, I came home excited because my boss had hinted at a promotion. Before I could finish explaining it, she cut me off with, "Let me guess. More work for the same average pay. Sounds exactly like your luck." That one hit harder than I wanted to admit. But at the time, I swallowed it. I told myself she was stressed, tired, overwhelmed. But those bad days started turning into normal days. If I sat down to watch a football game, she would walk by and say, "Wow, 3 hours of men tackling each other. Truly thrilling." If I planned a Saturday with my buddies, she would throw out something like, "Of course you want to leave. Heaven forbid you spend a weekend actually helping around here." The moment that really opened my eyes happened at a barbecue at her sister's place. I was grilling burgers, chatting with her brother-in-law about a deck project he was working on, when Melissa came over and announced loudly, "Yeah, he talks a big game about fixing stuff, but I am still waiting for him to actually finish anything he starts." Everyone laughed in that uncomfortable, forced way people laugh when they are not sure what else to do. Her sister tried to change the subject, but the damage was done. I stood there holding a spatula, realizing she had just embarrassed me in front of her entire family for absolutely no reason other than to take a shot at me. That night, when I tried to bring it up gently, "Hey, that comment earlier hurt my feelings," she did not even look away from the television. She just muttered, "Do not be so sensitive." It was a joke. But it was not a joke. It had stopped being a joke a long time ago. Once I began noticing it, I started seeing the pattern clearly. In front of friends, she would contradict tiny details in my stories just to correct me. When we hosted people, she would make snide comments about my cooking, my music, or even how I loaded the dishwasher. Every time I said something, she seemed ready with a dig. And whenever I called her out, she had the same line. "Relax. It is just joking." But jokes are funny. Jokes do not make you feel small. About 2 months before game night, I quietly started taking mental notes. Not obsessively, just observations. How many times she criticized me in a week. How often she ignored me. How she never asked about my day anymore. How she had stopped laughing at anything I said. How she no longer touched me in passing. Not even a simple goodbye kiss. We had become roommates who barely tolerated each other. But worse, because strangers living together would at least try to be polite. 1 month before everything blew up, I made a decision. I called a lawyer. Not to file divorce paperwork yet, but to learn what my options were. What the process looked like. What I needed to prepare for. I sat across from a woman named Angela Porter, and when she asked me to describe my marriage, I realized how exhausting it sounded when spoken out loud. She looked at me with genuine concern and asked, "How long have you been living like this?" I remember staring at the floor and saying, "Honestly, I did not realize how miserable I was until right now." She handed me a stack of documents and said, "Take your time. But please do not take too much time. Life is too short to live like you are walking on eggshells." Walking on eggshells. She had nailed it. That was exactly how I was living. Calculating every word, avoiding certain conversations, measuring the temperature of her mood before speaking. 2 weeks later, I went back and filed the divorce papers. I was not acting out of anger. I was not trying to punish her. I was simply accepting reality. The marriage had died long before I signed anything. I carried those papers with me for a week, waiting for the right moment. I did not expect that moment to happen during game night. But when Melissa proudly told a room full of our closest friends that she would never marry me again, something inside me clicked. It was like the universe stood up and said, "There it is. There is your sign." Sometimes the moment chooses you. Sometimes a person shows you who they truly are in front of a room full of witnesses, and the only honest response is to finally believe them. The room had gone silent. 8 people stared at that manila envelope like it contained a bomb. And in its own way it did. Melissa looked at me like I had just told her the world was ending. Her voice cracked when she said, "You are joking. Tell me you are joking. This cannot be real." But I did not say a word. Instead, I slid the papers out of the envelope and placed them neatly on the table between the empty bottles and half-played cards. The legal letterhead, the highlighted signature lines, it was all right there in black and white. Nothing about it looked like a prank. "Does this look like I am kidding?" I asked calmly. Kevin cleared his throat. Maybe we should give you two some space." "No," I said, keeping my eyes on the group. "Everyone can stay." She wanted to be brutally honest in front of everybody, so let us keep the honesty going. Melissa's expression kept cycling. Shock, anger, fear, disbelief, like a slot machine that could not land on the right result. You cannot be serious. We are at our friend's house. This is totally inappropriate. Inappropriate. I almost laughed. You stood in front of everyone and announced that marrying me was such a mistake you would never do it again. But me agreeing with you, that is the part that crosses the line? She opened her mouth, then closed it. For once, Melissa did not have a snappy comeback ready. Rachel leaned in, looking uncomfortable. Maybe you two should talk about this privately? We have been talking at home for months, I said. Or more accurately, I have been trying to talk while she treated me like a nuisance. Tonight she finally said what she has really been thinking. So here we are. Melissa snatched the papers off the table. This is insane. You are being completely ridiculous. Really? I asked softly. Name one thing you have said to me in the last 3 months that was not a complaint, an insult, or some kind of dig. Just one moment where you treated me like your husband instead of an annoyance. Silence. Everyone in the room sat frozen, eyes bouncing between the two of us. Melissa opened her mouth a few times, trying to come up with an example, but nothing came out. That is what I thought. She tried a different tactic. Okay, maybe I have been stressed lately, but ending a marriage over a few bad moments? That is crazy. Temporary. I pulled out my phone. Let me remind you. 3 days ago, you told your sister I was useless around the house. Last week you told the neighbor I have no ambition. And yesterday, when I mentioned wanting to take that photography class, you rolled your eyes so hard I thought you might hurt yourself. Her face flushed bright red. You were listening to my private conversations? Private conversations that you had in our kitchen while I was 10 feet away, I said. They were not exactly whispered secrets. Kevin's wife whispered something to him. Another couple shifted in their seats. The discomfort in that living room was thick enough to choke on. Here is the truth, I continued. You have made it painfully clear you do not respect me. You do not enjoy being around me. And apparently, you regret marrying me. So tell me, why should we stay married? Melissa looked around desperately, like she was hoping someone would swoop in and rescue her. Because that is what married couples do. They work through things. They do not just walk away. I laughed, an actual laugh. And when exactly were you planning on working through anything? Because from where I am standing, you have been the biggest problem in this marriage. Her face drained of color, then turned red again. How dare you? How dare I what? Agree with you? You literally declared you would not marry me again. I am just granting your wish. She grabbed my arm. Stop this right now. We are going home to talk like adults. I gently pulled my arm away. We are talking right now, with the same people you decided to embarrass me in front of. I did not humiliate you, she snapped. The entire room shifted. People looked away, uncomfortable, like they all knew exactly how wrong that sounded. Really? I asked. Saying you would never marry me again was not meant to humiliate me? She tried softening her voice. Look, I was just being funny. You know me. Sometimes I say things without thinking. Yeah, I said. I do know you. And that is the exact reason this is happening. I stood and straightened my jacket. The divorce papers are simple. Uncontested. Even split of everything. No alimony. Clean. Easy. She stared at me, her voice suddenly quiet. You really planned all this. Someone had to. The room was so silent that I swear you could hear the ice melting in the drinks. Melissa looked at the papers like she was trying to will them out of existence. So what now? She finally asked. Now, I said. You choose whether you want to sign them tonight or take them home. But either way, this marriage is over. You made that clear the moment you said you would never choose me again. She looked around the room once more, hoping for someone, anyone, to step in and say something that would make it all go away. Rachel finally broke the silence at the table and said softly, Maybe this is a good time to call it a night. She was right. That party was over the second Melissa opened her mouth. The drive home felt like sitting inside a pressure cooker. Melissa kept throwing different excuses and emotional tricks at me like she was flipping through cards in a magic deck. First came denial. This is all one huge mix-up. You are blowing everything out of proportion. Then bargaining. Okay, maybe I have not been the perfect wife lately, but we can fix this. We can go to therapy. We can try again. When I did not bite, she switched gears. Straight to anger. You know what? Fine. Maybe I have been critical, but you have checked out of this marriage for months. You never talk to me anymore. I actually laughed. I stopped talking because every time I opened my mouth, you acted like I was wasting your oxygen. That is not true, she snapped. Oh, really? Last Tuesday, I mentioned repainting the garage. You said, and I remember this word for word, great. Another thing you will start and never finish. Wednesday, I suggested trying that new Italian restaurant. You answered, why? So you can complain about the prices all night? And Thursday, okay, stop, she said quickly. I get it. But she did not get it. Not even close. When we walked into the house, I headed straight for the bedroom and pulled out a duffel bag from the closet. She followed me inside. Where are you going? A hotel, I said simply. I will pick up the rest of my things this weekend. You do not have to leave, she said. This is your house too. I looked at her. Is it? Because for the past 3 months, you have made it pretty clear I am just a guest you would rather not have. That was the moment her tough attitude cracked. She sat down on the edge of the bed, her voice suddenly small. I did not mean what I said tonight, she whispered. I was just trying to be funny. The thing about jokes, I said, folding another shirt into the bag, is that they usually come from a real place. And tonight, you said exactly what you have been feeling. But I love you, she said. I stopped packing and looked straight at her. Do you? Then when was the last time you showed it? She opened her mouth, searching for something to say, but nothing came out. I went back to packing. This is ridiculous, she said, defensive again. You are throwing away 6 years of marriage over one stupid comment. I am not throwing anything away, I said. You have been throwing pieces of this marriage in the trash for months. The comment tonight was just the first time you admitted it out loud. So that is it. You're going to walk away? What about for better or worse? I zipped the bag and turned toward her. The worst part has been landing squarely on one side lately, mine. Her phone buzzed. Probably someone from the game night already spreading the news. She ignored it. Everyone is going to think you lost your mind, she snapped, leaving over one comment. Let people think whatever they want, I said. The people who matter know this was not about a single sentence. This was about months of disrespect, criticism, and humiliation. She crossed her arms. And if I refuse to sign? Then we go through the court system, I said. It will take longer, but the outcome will be the same. I walked to the front door, bag in hand. She followed behind me, her steps quick and panicked. You are really leaving? She said. Yeah, I answered. I am done living in a place where I feel like an unwanted guest. I paused before stepping outside. You want to know the saddest part? I said quietly. If you had shown me even basic respect, we probably could have worked through everything else. Respect is the foundation. Without it, everything falls apart. Please, she whispered. Do not do this. You already did, I said. 3 months ago, when you decided kindness was optional. And tonight, when you told our friends that marrying me was a mistake. I am just finally catching up. I walked out, tossed my bag into the back seat, and drove to the Hampton Inn off Route 9. It was clean, quiet, and honestly, it felt more like home in 5 minutes than my actual house had felt in months. Around 10 o'clock, the messages started coming in. Kevin, man, are you all right? That was insane. Rachel, call if you need anything. Marcus, heard you made some bold moves tonight. Proud of you, dude. But the one that hit hardest came from Sandra, Kevin's wife. I have watched the way she talks to you for a long time. You did the right thing tonight. That one landed deep. People had noticed. I was not imagining everything. I was not being dramatic. I was not crazy. Around midnight, my phone rang. Melissa, the papers are still on the kitchen table, she said. I figured they would be. I keep staring at them, she whispered. And thinking about what you said about respect. I said nothing. I wanted her to sit with that thought. Maybe you are right, she said finally. Maybe I really have been awful to you. Maybe she paused. Okay. Yes, I have been. Maybe you can change, I said. But I am done waiting to find out. The line went dead quiet. The next few days felt like watching someone rush through every stage of grief on fast forward. Melissa called constantly. The text messages never stopped. Every single one of them had the same theme wrapped in different words. Please talk to me. That night got out of hand. I have been thinking about everything you said. You were right about some things. I called that therapist Rachel mentioned. We have an appointment scheduled for Thursday. I barely responded to any of it. There was nothing left to explain. The moment she made her choice at that game night, the marriage was finished. She had just not realized it yet. On Tuesday, she switched tactics. Around lunch, my assistant buzzed me and said, Your wife is here. I should have seen that coming. Melissa walked into my office carrying 2 sandwiches from my favorite deli. She wore the blue dress she knew I liked. She sat down across from my desk like this was any other normal day. I brought lunch, she said, trying to act casual. I already ate, I answered. She put the food down anyway. You look tired. Hotel beds are not exactly known for comfort. You could come home, she said softly. That is not my home anymore. That hit her like a slap. She blinked a few times and said, It does not have to be like this. Yes, I said. It does. Because even if you suddenly changed overnight and became the perfect wife, I would still remember how you treated me when you thought I would never do anything about it. So I do not get another chance? She asked. You had hundreds of chances. Every single morning for months was a new chance to treat me with basic respect. Every conversation was a chance to lift me up instead of tear me down. You chose the opposite every time. When logic failed, Melissa moved on to tears. I am scared, she whispered. I do not know how to be without you. You have been practicing for months, I said. Ignoring me, dismissing me, rolling your eyes at everything I said. You will be just fine. That is not fair, she muttered. What is not fair? I replied, leaning back in my chair. Is spending 6 years with someone who acts like you are worth less than a stranger. She left the sandwiches untouched. Wednesday came with backup reinforcements. Her sister called me first. She is devastated, her sister said. This is tearing her apart. I am sure it is, I replied. She has not been perfect, her sister admitted. But do you not think you are taking this too far? Did she tell you what she said at game night? I asked. There was a long pause. She said there was some misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, I said. She looked right at me in front of 8 people and said she would never marry me again. I simply agreed. She was joking, her sister argued weakly. You know how she can be. Yeah, I said. I do. That is exactly the problem. Then came her mother on Thursday, repeating the same script with a different voice. Friday, our friend Kevin called. Look, man, I get it, Kevin said. She crossed a line. But ending a marriage over one comment, it feels harsh. It was not one comment, I said. Think about how many times you have heard her mock me. Think about how often she rolls her eyes when I talk. How many times have you seen her contradict me or cut me off when we are around friends? Silence. Okay, he finally said. More than once. More than once, I repeated. Try every time we have hung out for months. What you saw Wednesday night was not the problem. It was just the highlight reel. I acted calm because I was trying to keep the peace, trying to hold a marriage together while she was actively tearing it apart. Now, I am done patching up holes she keeps punching in the wall. Saturday morning, I pulled into the hotel parking lot with a coffee in hand, and Melissa was waiting beside my car. She looked exhausted. The papers are signed, she said through my window. I shut off the engine. All of them, I asked. All of them, she said, handing me the envelope. But I want you to know, she added, I do not agree with this. You do not have to agree, I said. You just need to accept it. I could fight this, she said. I could contest the divorce and make it difficult for you. I looked at her calmly. You could, but all that would do is prove exactly what I have been saying about you. And what would be the point? You already told a room full of people you would never marry me again. Her shoulders slumped. I did not mean it. Maybe not, I said. But you said it. And that moment of honesty told me everything I needed to know. So what now? She asked quietly. Now we both move forward. You get to be single again, which from the way you behaved lately seems like what you wanted. And I get a chance to find someone who thinks being married to me is something good, not some kind of punishment. She stood there for a moment like she wanted to say something else, but nothing came. She simply turned and walked back to her car. That afternoon, I signed the divorce papers and dropped them off at my lawyer's office. 3 months later, it was officially final. For the first time in more than a year, I felt like I could actually breathe again. About 6 months after that explosive game night, I ran into Kevin at the grocery store. He genuinely smiled when he saw me, which honestly surprised me a little. You never know how people will act after they watch your marriage fall apart in their living room. He slapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey man, how is life treating you?" "Good," I told him. "Really good." And for once, I truly meant it. I had bought a small place on the other side of town. Nothing fancy, just a modest house with a quiet yard and a porch I actually liked sitting on. The best part was the silence. No sarcastic jabs about my taste in furniture. No annoyed sighs when I wanted to watch a football game. No snide remarks about how I spent my weekends. Kevin chuckled. We miss you at game night. I bet things have been calmer, I said. He laughed again. Yeah, a lot less drama, but I have to admit, a little more boring too. We wandered the aisles talking about work, life, meaningless stuff. Then he hit me with the question I knew was coming. Have you heard from Melissa at all? Not since everything became official, I said, grabbing a box of cereal and dropping it into my cart. She has been asking about you, he said. Wants to know how you are doing. Whether you are seeing anyone. I shrugged. And what do you tell her? The truth, he said. That you look happier now than you ever did when you were married. That hit me right in the chest because it was true. I was happier. I had finally started that photography class I used to talk about. I joined a hiking group. I made new friends who did not know anything about my former marriage. People who liked me for who I was now, not for the version of me that had spent years trying to avoid arguments. Do you regret any of it? Kevin asked. I thought for a moment. Only that I waited as long as I did. He raised an eyebrow. Really? You do not miss being married at all? I miss the idea of being married to someone who actually wanted to be married to me, I said. But that is not what I had. Kevin nodded. Rachel said the same thing. She told me you two looked miserable at the end. We were, I admitted. At least I was. Melissa seemed fine with things until she realized I was not coming back. We finished shopping and talked in the parking lot for a few minutes before heading our separate ways. On the drive home, I kept thinking about our conversation, about regrets, what-ifs, and the roads we end up taking only after ignoring the warning signs for too long. The truth was, I did not spend much time thinking about Melissa anymore. Not because I hated her or held some kind of grudge. I simply felt done. That chapter of my life had closed. Just last week, I had dinner with a woman from my photography class. She laughed at my dumb jokes. She actually listened when I talked. When I mentioned my recent hiking trip, she smiled like she was genuinely interested, not like she was waiting for me to stop talking. It was amazing how good respect felt after living without it for so long. Over the past year, I learned a few things about myself. I learned that I would rather be alone than disrespected. I learned that love without respect is not love, it is just noise. And I learned that staying with someone who does not value you is not loyalty. It is self-destruction. That game night almost feels like it happened to a different person entirely. The man who sat there taking hit after hit while trying to keep the peace. I barely recognize him. He thought marriage was supposed to look like that. He thought he deserved that kind of treatment. He was wrong. A while back, the woman I have been seeing asked me about my marriage. I gave her the short version, nothing dramatic. Just the truth. We grew apart, I said. Wanted different things. It ran its course. Then she asked, do you think you would ever get married again? I thought of that question from game night. Would you marry your spouse again? I remembered how easy it had been for Melissa to say never. I would get married again, I said. But only to someone who could answer that question with absolutely. She smiled. That seems fair. It does seem fair. Fair to expect the person you marry to actually want you. Fair to expect kindness and respect. Fair to believe that after 6 years together, your spouse would not announce to a room full of friends that marrying you was such a mistake they would never do it again. These days, I sleep easily. I wake up in a house where nobody mocks my coffee. Nobody rolls their eyes at my plans. Nobody treats me like a burden they have to tolerate. Sometimes I think about those divorce papers, how I carried them in my jacket for a week, waiting for the right moment. Funny how the right moment ended up being the exact second she voiced what she had probably been feeling for months. Life has a strange way of lining things up. In the end, I am grateful it happened. Because now I know what I will never put up with again. And I know exactly what I want moving forward. When people ask me if I regret my divorce, I tell them the truth. My only regret is that it took her saying she would never marry me again for me to realize I should not want to be married to her either. The difference is, I was smart enough to finally do something about it.